What if I told you that every time someone causes you pain and you react, you're actually handing them exactly what they want? That emotional reaction. It's not just instinct, it's currency, a reward. Stay with me. Because what Carl Jung uncovered about human behavior might just flip the way you deal with conflict on its head. Jung once said something simple, but it hits hard. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But there's a deeper layer to this. When someone attacks you, it's rarely about you. What they're really doing is projecting their inner world onto you, and it's far darker than most people realize. Carl Jung introduced the idea of the shadow self, the parts of ourselves we bury deep down, too ashamed or afraid to face. These include fears, unresolved trauma, insecurities, and hidden desires. Here's the psychological twist. When someone lashes out at you, they're not reacting to who you are. They're reacting to their shadow in you. Jung found that projection is a defense mechanism people use to avoid facing their inner wounds. Rather than look within, they project those uncomfortable truths outward on anyone who reflects them. They cast you as the villain because they're terrified of being the hero, who must battle their own demons. Now here's where it gets personal. You're often the target not because of anything you've done, but because something in you mirrors a part of themselves they hate. Their criticism? It's actually self-criticism. Their judgment? A mirror of their inner dialogue. Jung explained that the unconscious mind can't differentiate between self and other when it comes to these repressed traits. So they're not fighting you. They're fighting themselves through you. And your emotional reaction? That's the trigger that validates their illusion. When you defend, explain, argue, or even just react with hurt, you're confirming their narrative. You're saying, yes, your shadow projection is real. You become a character in their psychological play. But here's where Carl Jung's work becomes a game changer. He realized that what these people truly crave is your reaction. They're fishing with their words, casting emotional bait. Every jab, every insult, every sarcastic comment, they're testing your emotional waters. And most people take the bait without ever realizing it. Why? Because these triggers activate what Jung called complexes, unconscious, emotional patterns formed in childhood. So when someone pushes your buttons, they're not just annoying you in that moment. They're waking up old wounds, abandonment issues, rejection trauma, fears of not being good enough. That response you feel? It's not coming from the adult you. It's coming from the child who still lives in your unconscious. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The truth is, happy people don't try to break others. Secure people don't need to provoke or humiliate to feel significant. When someone tries to hurt you, it's almost always a reflection of the war they're fighting within themselves. They're trying to recruit you into their suffering, to validate their internal narrative that life is hostile, people are cruel, and they're always the victim. And here's what will shatter that cycle. Jung discovered that the most powerful reaction is no reaction. Not silence born of bitterness, but silence born of mastery. He called it withdrawing the projection, removing yourself from the psychological equation entirely. When you don't bite the bait, when you don't argue or explain or defend, you break the emotional chain. You refuse to be the mirror for their pain. What happens then? They're left staring into their own shadow, and for most, that's unbearable. Your silence becomes a psychological mirror. Without your emotional energy to distract them, they're forced to see themselves. But don't confuse non-reaction with weakness. This isn't being passive or submissive, it's being psychologically sovereign. Jung believed that true strength isn't about overpowering others. It's about remaining centered when someone tries to pull you off balance. It's the ability to witness someone's chaos without letting it disturb your peace, he said. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And to do that, you have to step out of the roles others assign to you. You're not their scapegoat. You're not their emotional punching bag. You're not a supporting actor in their unresolved drama. Here's the moment that changes everything. Carl Jung called it the transcendent function, the instant where you catch yourself before you react. That microsecond holds the power to transform your entire emotional life. Because in that pause, you choose. Will I react from my past pain or respond from present awareness? Will I play out the script written by my wounds or write a new one from my wisdom? This is the secret society never teaches us. The one who stays calm in the storm holds the true power. Not because they suppress emotions, but because they express them consciously. This is the path to what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming a whole, integrated person. Not perfect, not flawless, but free. When you stop reacting to every insult or betrayal, you stop living from your wounds and start living from your truth. You're no longer at the mercy of others' projections or expectations. Jung taught that what you resist persists, meaning fighting someone's negativity only feeds it. Arguing with their distorted version of you gives it energy. Defending yourself validates their attack. That's the trap most never see. Every time you explain yourself to someone who doesn't care to understand, you step deeper into their psychological labyrinth. You become emotionally entangled, and what begins as conflict turns into a trauma bond, an emotional loop where pain creates attachment. But there's a way out, and it's radical, total psychological disengagement. Not cold detachment, but conscious non-participation. You recognize, this isn't about me, it's about them, and something deep inside you shifts. When someone shows you their true nature, how they treat others, how they act when no one is watching, that's a gift. Not about your worth, but about their character. This is where Jung's concept of psychological objectivity comes in. It's the ability to observe without absorbing, to see clearly, without being clouded by emotional reactivity. Now let's flip the inner script. Instead of asking, why are they doing this to me? Ask, what does this say about them? Instead of thinking, how do I make them understand? Ask, why do I feel the need to be understood by someone who's attacking me? That's where the gold is. Because every time you explain yourself to someone unworthy of your truth, you betray the part of you that already knows your worth. Carl Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. If you need someone else's permission to feel worthy, you haven't fully accepted yourself yet. Here's the liberating truth. You don't need external validation to define your value. Other people's opinions are just emotional weather, shifting, unpredictable and irrelevant to your inner world. When you find your center, their chaos doesn't touch you. You become like a mountain, unmoved, unshaken, grounded in self-awareness. Jung called this self-realization, a state where your inner truth is your compass. And once you get here, you'll see something profound. Most people mistake aggression for confidence. But true confidence? It's quiet. It doesn't scream to be seen. It doesn't react to every insult. It doesn't need to win arguments, because it's already at peace. Carl Jung said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. The moment you stop chasing external approval and start honoring your inner truth, you become psychologically untouchable. You access what Jung called the self. You're integrated. Whole identity beyond ego, beyond fear. And when someone tries to wound you and you don't flinch, you're not weak. You're not passive. You're powerful. Not because you've avoided conflict, but because you've transcended it. This is the next stage of human evolution. Not physical, but psychological. The capacity to remain awake and aware even as others try to pull you into their unconscious patterns. Jung's final revelation was this. Psychological maturity isn't about winning arguments, it's about knowing which ones are even worth your time. Your peace is more precious than their approval. Your clarity is more sacred than their confusion. Your emotional sovereignty is worth more than their validation. And when you stop giving your energy to every provocation, something extraordinary happens. You reclaim your power. You're no longer a pawn in their drama. You become the author of your own emotional story. Jung said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But the kind of transformation, that's up to you. You can be transformed by old wounds or by awakened wisdom. You can live on autopilot or with conscious choice. So next time someone tries to hurt you, remember, they're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to control you. Your reaction is their win. Your stillness is your power. Your inner peace is your revolution. Don't give them what they crave. Give yourself what you've always deserved. Freedom, wholeness, and the strength to be exactly who you are. No matter how loudly the world tries to rewrite you. If this opened your eyes, you've just scratched the surface of what's possible through inner work. Subscribe and keep walking this path of psychological growth. Your future self will thank you.